Wow, you really can see everybody. I promised myself that if I bounded up on that stage, that any nerves would just be left down there. So I did. So that's good. Ed, go. Okay, so I feel a bit of a fraud sometimes when I say that I suffered cancer as a child, because I was so young that it doesn't really mean anything to me. It was more my parents, actually, that suffered it. They were the ones that were diagnosed with cancer, essentially, not me. I was 18 months old. But it did give me an aftermath of cancer. It did give me a childhood of heading to hospitals, injections. I hate needles. It gave me a childhood of not really knowing what actually was going on with me, because, as I say, I was 18 months old. I didn't understand why I was in hospitals all the time, and it doesn't help that, as you can see, I was a fairly geeky-looking kid. And kids are cruel. Kids are really honest. And I'm not saying I was bullied, but at the same time, they were always very honest with me, and I needed to find a place, and I felt really hard done by. So I looked for a place, and I found it in cycling. Suddenly, I was actually a good cyclist. You'd never know from that, but I was. I was pretty quick, and I was, but you know, behind all of that, radiotherapy that I'd had as a kid was affecting my hip, and suddenly, bang, I was told I would never walk again. At the age of 14, cycling, the only thing that I enjoyed was suddenly taken away from me. The only thing that could save me was an operation to pin my hip back together. The radiotherapy had destroyed my hip, which they did, and I recovered, and I went back cycling again, looking like that. Would you believe it? And people didn't laugh at me. I was still quite quick, and I recovered. But then that cycling gave way to a different passion. It gave way to a passion for motorsport. I enjoyed motorsport. I watched it, suddenly realised that I could do it, and I was quite good at it. I was pretty competitive. I won a national championship, and me and my diggy hip had some good years doing that. But then that itself gave way to another passion, and that was women. I found my wife, for a start. She wasn't my wife at the time. And I got married, but then I got comfortable. We all get comfortable, don't we? And you can see I got a little bit too comfortable. I rather enjoyed my food. 6 months later, after that photo was taken, I decided I was going to get fit. But this picture masks what was going on underneath. Sadly, the radiotherapy that had affected my hip as a teenager was back, and my hip was deteriorating. And then bang, again, I was told I might never walk again. I was told to face a wheelchair, because it deteriorated such that I could hardly walk. An incredibly impressive surgeon decided to go for a hip replacement, which meant I recovered, and I went back to cycling again for the second time in my life. And then suddenly my wife one night said to me, I was quite asleep, and she woke me up. She'd come back in from an evening out, and she said, why don't you do a triathlon? Now, this particular triathlon was a 400-metre swim, a 15-mile bike, and a 3-mile run. Now, I couldn't swim, really, bike or run, but I said, yeah, go on, I'll have a go at that. It was 2 weeks' time, and so I did it, as you can see. So I took 2 weeks to prepare for this thing. I learned how to swim, and turned up and did it, and had an absolute ball, and I became a regular triathlete. As you can see from that, on the picture on the left, I also became a family man. I have 2 boys, and of course, my wife. Carried on competing in triathlons at that same kind of level that I've just sort of explained to you. And then on Twitter, somebody said to me, you're a triathlete, aren't you? You must do what you call Ironman triathlons. Now, an Ironman triathlon is the daddy of the triathlon. That's a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a marathon, a 26.2-mile run. Now, rather than say no, I said not yet. so I had to do it. Now, I don't know about anybody in this room, but open water swimming is different to pool swimming. So I had to teach myself how to open water swim, and I had some fun doing that. When I say fun, I mean I nearly drowned. The biking was different, okay? I was already by now starting to get into cycling, and this particular day of the pictures up there was I pushed myself to my limit on the bike. This particular day actually started fairly local to here, Cardiff. It was Cardiff to Buckingham and back, 265 miles in 17 hours. But running, of course, was a no-no. I had a hip replacement. I'm not allowed to run. So I ran a half marathon on that particular day, just to see how it felt. And I figured that the first half of a holiday is quite long, the second half's quick, so then the marathon part of an Ironman would be the same. I rocked up in Sweden on the start of the Ironman, beautiful day in August last year, and to be honest, the swim and the bike were as I expected, fairly straightforward. I got off the bike after the 2.4-mile swim and the 112-mile bike, and actually I felt really fine. The marathon nearly killed me, but I haven't got the time, unfortunately, to go through all of that. So I finished it, and I wrote a book about it on days like these. It's on Amazon. Am I allowed to do that? And I set up a charity, Honeybones, designed to support people who've had a similar position to me, but affecting their joints. I've obviously run out of time, so thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been useful for you.